All right, again, as promised, I'm going to take just about 10 minutes or so to give you kind of a prelude of what the class is going to be about next semester. I'm going to send this to you. The reason I haven't sent it to you yet, this is the book information, is we have 2 more people joining us in spring, and for whatever reason, I can't get their emails. You know, usually when I go and I check for emails, it has the name, but neither one of them are listed. So I don't know if that means they haven't had accounts made for them yet or what, but if I can't get it today, I'm just going to send this to you anyway, so don't worry about writing this down. I don't know how you buy books. I know sometimes when people are on financial aid, they're supposed to buy books from the bookstore. To my knowledge, the bookstore doesn't sell books anymore. All right, so they'll give you an electronic version, and you can go out to here. So again, you'll have this, and it's the ebook buying instructions. Now, some people don't like that. They don't want an ebook. If there's a hard copy available, they want a hard copy. So if you go out to Muroc.com, it's another Muroc book. I think I had told you that. Then you go under Shop Books here under Muroc.com, and you choose C# programming books. It's the only one that's got C# basically in the title. Not this one does too, but I mean just C#. So it's that one that's right here. So if you go out and buy it from there, as it says, you can buy the print book for $57.50, the ebook for $52.50, or both for $70. And if that seems like it's too much, I also went out to Amazon. Now I don't know if I'm actually supposed to do this because I'm never supposed to dissuade you or tell you not to use the bookstore, but I'm not sure what the policy is here. So there, notice it's $39.99 to $48.88, so it's or $48, so it's cheaper. All right, and there's other places that you can go out to too if you don't know this. There's Fat Brain, and there's a bunch of other places that you can go to buy used books. But that's the book, Muroc's C# 2015. And I think I've said this to you already, but I'm just going to quickly say it again, and that is, it's got 908 pages in it. Maybe you are that good, you could go over all 908. I'm not. So we're not going to go over everything that's in there. There's just too many, with time constraints, it just wouldn't make a lot of sense. All right. I've already got my Vital Source copy, so I've got that up on the screen here. Believe it or not, probably just about during the first week, we're going to go over all 3 of these chapters, these first 3 chapters. And I'm going to show you examples in just a second of what we're going to do. Now, when people hear that, they're like, geez, that's way too much. That's 100 pages. And yeah, I know that. But it's all elementary type of stuff. And we'll slow down. And if we don't get all of it done the first week, then we don't. That's not a big thing. Since we have the 2 people starting on the first day of class, if you guys remember that on the first day, typically you had to either go to the other building or they did something. I don't know how they're going to do that now with COVID. If they're meeting with these other 2 people remotely, if they're Zooming, that's my guess, but I don't even know. Well, all I'm saying is there is a chance on that first day they may have to leave for a bit. I'm not going to go over anything when they're not here, but you're here. Does that make sense? Okay. So then we go in, and the good news is the people who are in this class right now, you've gone over this stuff already. You know what numeric data is, what string data is. You know what control structures are because you've covered an if statement, an if-else if, an if-else. You've done a switch statement, so you've done all those things. For loops, you've done a while loop. You've done a do-while loop. You've done a for loop. And guess what? They work exactly the same way in this language. The biggest change I think you guys are going to have with this language is you can't be sloppy here. And I don't mean to say that any of you are sloppy now. But if you don't put a semicolon on the end of a line, boom, the program blows up. All right, and it's all stuff like that. This is very much a typed language. If you declare something to be an int, all right, it's got to hold only numbers. Whereas if basically if you use something with a var or a let in JavaScript, you can change it. You can't do it here. All right, so we'll go over that in section 2. Probably the hardest, well, really the hardest 2 sections are 3 and 4. And we're going to go over some of the stuff in 3 and 4. And at least this one here and this one here. Now, we'll talk about all of them. But some of the stuff that's in there, when you start to learn object-oriented programming, it's typically about the hardest thing that you do to that point at this institution. All right? I do want to get into this, and I don't know how much time we'll have to do this, etc., but we will do this. We will get into working with a database. We will write at least one program that will use a database, and we will be using our C# program to update values in a database. What does that mean? It means we'll create a form that'll look not that different from what you'd create in HTML. All right, the way we create it is different, but we'll be able to either create new records to put into a database, retrieve all existing records from a database, update existing records from a database, or delete existing records from a database. So we'll do all that stuff. We'll probably have no time to work on any of this stuff here, but I don't know. All right? And if we don't, I'll try to see if I may even have some lectures out there. I don't know. Files are kind of important because if you're not going to use databases and you want something, in your program to persist, you need a file. You need to save it to a file. So we'll probably talk about those. The XML stuff is kind of dated, so we're not going to talk about that. LINQ is actually very important. What LINQ allows you to do is it allows you to perform database-like operations on things that aren't a database. Since we haven't talked about databases yet, that doesn't pay to talk about that anymore right now than that. All right? And the entity framework is basically, if there's time, when we taught the Node.js course, the one you'll take in fall, when we taught that a year ago, we were using ASP.NET and we were using C#, and we were writing database programs in that. We probably won't have time to do that now, but we'll see. We won't go over how to enhance the user interface or deploying. We won't go over either of those, just so you know. Now, if you look on the screen, hopefully you can see this down here. If I point way down towards the bottom, there's your Visual Studio Code icon. You know it, you love it, etc. That's your Visual Studio icon. So it looks pretty much the same except that it's purple instead of being blue. Now, you will install that. We will install that together on the first day of class. All right? And when you do bring it up, because I'm going to have the other machine by that time, so I'm just going to install it with you on that day. So I'll be starting new just like you will. And it comes up and it looks like this. Even though their book that we'll be using is Muroc C# 2015, we will still be using the latest and greatest Visual Studio, which is 2019. All right? So when it comes up, yours won't look at all like this because you won't have any projects in there. In fact, mine won't either at that time. But if you've got existing projects, you'll be able to use them like that. It's kind of neat. I think this is it, but I could be wrong. And this is old. But one of my students last year actually went back and rewrote his portfolio using C#. All right, which I thought was kind of neat that he did that. All right. But you'll see this stuff. And what we'll be working with in here virtually all of the time is one of these two things, either opening up an existing project or a solution, or creating a new project. When you create a project in C#, and I'm going to show you it in just a second, you won't remember it probably, you'll forget it by the time you come back, but it's okay. I just want to explain it to you what's going on. When you create a brand new C# project, it creates a folder with the name that you've given it, and it puts in some files for you automatically. Some of those files you should never tinker with. Some of those files you can change the name, etc. But I'm going to quickly show you, just very quickly, two different projects. All right, and hopefully I won't screw them up. It's going to be the same thing. All right, and I'm going to ask somebody, let's say we'll ask them for your first name, we'll ask them for your last name. I have no notes or nothing here, so I could easily screw this up. We'll ask them for your first name, we'll ask them for your last name, we'll ask them for the number of hours, you are working, and we will ask them for your hourly rate. I'm not going to worry right now about overtime or anything like that. So in other words, if I say Jeff for the first name, Scott for the last name, 40 for the number of hours I work, $10 for the amount per hour, it should come back and say, Jeff Scott made $400 last week. Does that make sense to everyone? And we'll do it first using what's called a console application. In other words, there'll be no user interface. When we run it, it's going to look like that. All right. But what that allows us to do by running some console applications is it allows us to concentrate on the language. All right. Then we'll come back and we'll create another project, which will do the same thing, but it'll be a GUI. All right. And we do both of them in the class. The book goes over both of them. So I'm going to go over, create a new project right here. All right. And it comes up, and again, yours will look probably exactly like this, but it should look similar. You know, I've got 2019 that I downloaded. This is from a year ago. So when we download it, the interface may have changed. I will tell you almost for certain the interface will look different than what you see in the book. Because again, the book is now about 4 or 5 years old. All right. So we'll come in through here, and the first thing we'll want to do is we'll want to create a console app. We want it in C#. We'll talk about what all this stuff means in another time. But I'm going to basically say that. It says, okay, what do you want to call this? And I'm going to call this Payroll App Console. Just get used to when you give these things names, not putting any blank spaces in your names. Don't put any special characters. No commas, no parentheses, no apostrophes, etc. Just run the stuff together. All right, and it says, where do you want to save this? Well, notice it saves it by default in source repos. I don't even know where the hell that is. So I'm going to tell it that I want it to save it just to my desktop. Sometimes it comes up and it says that. I don't know why. But did it change it? No. Usually if you do it again, it will take it. Now, knowing my luck today, it won't. No. All right, so, I mean, if I have to, I'll save it there. I don't really want to. Try typing it in here manually. Okay, it looks like it took that. So I click create. And what you will notice, because I want to show this to you again, I'll be done by 8:30, or I'll do my best to be done by 8:30. But it made this, and if I go and look on my desktops in my mess here, somewhere up here I should have, there it is, Payroll App Console. So it made this folder, and it put these files in there. Okay, just so you know, a couple things quickly. Don't ever jack with anything in VS. That's the Visual Studio. That's basically all the system files that it has. All right. When we get done, the program, when it runs, it will build what's called an executable. That's what's in your bin. Why does that matter? It matters because when it's a semester from now, and you are going and you're adding to your portfolio and you're adding links to your C# projects, you can link to that if you want to. All right. Okay. This is some more. This is some OBJ. This is some object code. Just don't touch any of these. How's that? The only one that's in here that you're typically going to want to touch is going to be the .cs file for C#. Now, if I brought it up like this, I'm not going to do this, but if I double clicked on the solution file, it would automatically open up Visual Studio for me, and it would and it would basically set up everything to go. That's another way that you can get into it. Typically, people don't do it that way. So let me just jump back in here. So what do I have here? Well, when you look at it, I've got 4 windows. This window right here is kind of like if you went and took a look in File Explorer and you looked at everything that was in there, because it's showing you everything that's here. All right. This window right here is not going to be, it's going to be empty for what the project I'm going to show you. But when you work on GUIs, and I'm going to show you a GUI in a minute, so if I click on a label, it'll show me all the things on the label I can automatically change. This is my error window right here. So when I've got errors, and one nice thing about Visual Studio Code, it does a really good job of figuring out your errors for you. And this is my work area. All right, so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to quickly create a bunch of variables. So I'm going to say here string first name, and I'm just going to initialize it to the empty string. String last name, and initialize that to the empty string. Now I'm getting these green things here. Those are warnings, and it's telling me that I've declared 2 variables that I'm not using in the program. That's all it's doing. They'll go away in just a minute. All right, so I'm going to say here, let's make it a float. No, make it a double. Double hours, and I'm just going to set that equal to 0, double rate, and I'm going to set that equal to 0, and double gross, and I'm going to set that equal to 0. Now, even though I set those equal to 0, since they're doubles, a double is something that can contain a decimal place. So internally in the system, they're stored as 0.0. Not that that's a big thing, but just so you know. So I could put in here, for example, 0.0 if I wanted to do that. On the other hand, if I make this an int, which means it's a whole number, and I try to put in 0.0, then you'll notice that this is going to end up getting red, because that's illegal. And down here on the bottom, it's showing me already what my error is. Cannot explicitly convert double to an int. All right, so I'm just going to go back and I'm going to change that back to a double, and the error will go away. All right, I'm just going to leave it like this. All right, then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say, I'm going to ask the user for a first name, I'm going to ask the user for a last name, I'm going to ask the user for an hourly rate, and I'm going to ask the user for a number of hours worked. Does that all make sense? I'm not going to do any validation right now. You'll learn how to do that in the class. All right, but again, I don't want this to take too long. So I'm going to come in here and say this. First name, in fact, I'm not even going to do it like that. I'm going to say console.writeLine, which we'll write on the screen, and I'm going to say enter first name. Now, if I ran the program right now, literally there would just be a message on the screen that would say enter first name, but it wouldn't do anything else, which would be kind of dumb, but we could do that if we wanted to. So I'm going to say first name equal console.readLine, which says take whatever value. I'm not sure why, oh, it needs a semicolon there. Well, that was good to show you that. Okay. So that will actually basically ask me for my first name. Now, since it's the same thing, I'm going to say here, enter last name. And I'll say last name equals that. That makes sense to everybody? All right. So, now we're going to have a problem. Because I want to say enter hours worked, but when I come in here and I put in hours, I'm going to get an error because it assumes that what I'm reading in is a string. This isn't a string. All right. Let's see. I remember how to do this. I think it's convert. And it should be to double because that was a double. All right, and hopefully what you notice is the errors have gone away. All right, and all I said was take whatever I read in there and convert it into a number. All right, it's kind of like parse float that we've been using right now. But again, if I come in here and run this program, and I'll run it a couple times, and it should be hours worked, and that should be hourly rate. All right, and then finally I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say gross equal hours times rate, and then I'm going to come in and I'm going to say console.writeLine first name plus first name plus, and I'm going to just put this all on one humongo line here, just so you see it. But when it prints out, that'll give us a line break there, not second name. Last name, last name, hours. Again, the output on here is probably going to look ugly, but that's okay. Hours rate. Gross. Now, program's done. But if I ran it right now, it's going to flash on the screen, boom, boom, and you won't even see it. You have to basically let the program know when you're doing a console you want it to stop what it's doing. So I just say console.readline, which will make it just sit there and stop until I actually enter any key, and the program will end. All right, so I'm going to save this and quickly run it. I don't think there were any errors. Oh, okay. And I'll fix this in a minute, so I'll put in here Jeff, Scott, 40, 10. That all makes sense? Now, the only thing is I don't like the fact that when I entered this, it was on a new line like that. I don't like that. So instead of making these console.writes, write lines, I'll make them console.writes. And I'll need a space here then, so it enters it on the same line. That should work just fine. So enter first name Jeff, last name Scott, hours worked 50, hourly rate 10, and there it is. Does that make sense? Just at least a little bit. So that's what we're going to spend a lot of time on at the beginning. All right. So save that. And one thing I didn't have you guys do, but I'm going to have them do it probably more than I had you do it, is this thing that's right here, this thing. This is called a project. All right. This right here is called a solution. A project can have multiple solutions in it. So I'm going to right mouse click on here. All right, maybe I said it backwards. I don't know. But I'm going to right mouse click on here and I'm going to say add. And I'm going to tell it to add a new project. All right, this time I'm going to say, you know what? I don't want a console app. I want a Windows Forms app. So we can make it GUI. Okay, so I'm going to click on that one. And it says, what do you want to call this? And I'm going to call this, I forgot what we called the other one, but I think it was Payroll App Console. This will be Payroll App GUI. All right, and it makes this is our form. All right, this over here, you can't see it now, but you'll see it in a second. This is called the toolbox. This is where you paint what goes on the form. So I'm very quickly, I'm not going to, it's going to be ugly, but I don't care because that's not what we're trying to do right now. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to quickly create a label, a label, a label, and a label. And underneath that, I'm going to, on the side of each one of those, in fact, I will need one more label. And then I'm going to go over to text box over here. And the other thing I can do here is I can just Control C, Control V to copy it. If I want to, Control V again to copy, Control V again to copy, and Control V again to copy. All right, because I don't want to waste your time. Okay, we're just going to pretend right now that I went over and I changed all these labels so they said first name, last name, etc. Because I don't want to waste your time watching me change that stuff. All right. So normally we'd come in and we'd change all these. We would change the name of that. It wouldn't be label 1. It would be label first name. This would be called text box first name, etc. Does all that make sense? All right. Then we come in and we're going to add, and we'll do this very quickly. We'll add a button, 2 buttons, just to keep it simple. This one will be our calculate button, and this one will be our exit button. Okay. So the idea is we put in something here, 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 here. We click here. We get an answer there. We click here, and the program ends. All that makes sense? All right. First thing is this is going to be our gross. I don't want to allow us to change that. So I'm going to come in here, and where it's got this, there's a property called read only. Notice if I double click on it, it turned gray now, which means I can't change it. All right, I'm going to, again, I would be renaming all this stuff, but I'm just keeping it real simple. So I come in here, and I double click on a control like I just showed you, and I write code. All right. So I come in here, and I'm going to say this. Will kind of look like what we did before. Double hours equals, for now, let's make it, let's see, can we do this? Text box 3 dot text dot, let's see. Well, better remember what it was called. Okay, I'm going to get an error here, but if I come in here and say convert dot to double, hopefully this will work. Definition for text. Because it should have been a capital T. All right, so there's hours. This will be rate, and that'll be text box 4. And we'll say double gross equal hours times rate, and text box 5, I think there were 5, dot text equals gross dot toString. Believe it or not, I think I'm done. We'll find out. All right. So save this, run it. You run it by just clicking right here. Oops. Problem is, it still thinks it's running the old program, so I've got to tell it to run the new one. Very simple to do. Just come over here to my second one, right mouse click on it, and choose Set as Startup Project. All right, we'll go over all this stuff next semester. So there it is. So Jeff, Scott, 40, 10. I click the button, 400. Okay. The only thing I didn't show you was exiting. We'll do that. I'm going to give you the code for exiting, but for right now, I'm going to keep it unbelievably simple. All right, and that is, I'm just going to come in here and say application.exit. Do I need parens? I don't remember if I do or not. I'll run it again. So John Smith, 60 hours, 30 hours a week, made $1,800, and that's it. So that's what we're going to be doing the first week. And just because I actually like using a program like Payroll, because it's something everybody can identify with, it's something pretty simple. All right, there are written tests that come with this, so the class will be very much structured like this class has been. In other words, as we go over chapters, I will give you a test. I will give you written tests, all right, basically for each chapter that we cover, and you will have hands-on tests. There will not be, if we go over 12 chapters, there will not be 12 hands-on tests. Come on. We may go over the first 3 tests, or for the first 3 chapters, and then take a test. Typically, sometimes it'll be just one chapter if the stuff is complex enough. Otherwise, it'll be probably usually about 2 chapters. Now, that was quick, and I'm not saying you're going to retain any of it, but at least you've seen it. So again, what I will make sure that I do is I'm going to check again and see if they've given those 2 gentlemen email addresses, but if they have not, either way, by the end of the period today, you're going to have this sent to you. All right? Questions? Well, the last thing I'll tell you quickly is I will have a YouTube channel out there. During the break, one thing that I have to do is I have to write the syllabus. So once all that stuff is up and out there, you'll be able to go to Inside Rankin. But to make it easier for you, once I've got Inside Rankin up and running and everything is set, I will send all of you an email with a link to where it is on Inside Rankin. Okay? So it took 5 more minutes than I thought, but that's it. Thank you.